The retired police dog auction in rural Oklahoma wasn't supposed to be controversial. These events happened quarterly, always drawing the same crowd. Ranchers looking for protection dogs, wealthy collectors wanting bragging rights, and occasionally families seeking trained companions. But on September 14th, something happened that would expose a scandal reaching into the highest levels of the state's K-9 program and challenge everything people believed about loyalty, grief, and what happens to heroes when they're no longer useful. 10-year-old Ember Caulfield wasn't supposed to be there. Children weren't allowed at these auctions without adult supervision. The dogs were unpredictable. The environment was harsh, and liability issues made organizers nervous. But Ember had walked 3 miles alone that morning, carrying nothing but her father's police badge and a letter she'd kept hidden for 2 years. The letter that explained everything. The letter that changed everything. Officer Rhett Caulfield had been killed in the line of duty 26 months earlier during what was officially called a routine traffic stop gone wrong. His K-9 partner, named Valor, had been with him that night. The dog had fought desperately to protect his handler, sustaining injuries that ended his career. In the aftermath, Valor was deemed psychologically unstable and unsuitable for reassignment or adoption. He'd spent 2 years in a kennel facility, isolated, deteriorating, waiting for someone to claim him. Nobody did. What the public didn't know was that Valor's psychological instability was a convenient label applied by Lieutenant Garrison Thorne, the officer who'd been driving the backup vehicle the night Rhett died. Thorne had arrived late to the scene, suspiciously late, according to some. There were whispers that he'd deliberately delayed response, that Rhett had discovered something about Thorne's involvement in a drug seizure discrepancy, that the routine stop had been anything but routine. But whispers without proof don't lead to investigations, and Thorne had connections throughout the department. Keeping Valor locked away served Thorne's interests perfectly. The dog was the only witness to what really happened that night. K-9s were trained to respond to specific handlers, but they also observed everything. If Valor was ever placed with someone who understood police dogs, someone who might notice unusual behavioral responses or triggers, questions might be asked. Better to keep him isolated, labeled dangerous, forgotten. Rhett had known the risks of his investigation into Thorne. That's why he'd written the letter to Ember, placing it with his attorney with instructions. If anything happens to me, give this to my daughter when she's old enough to understand, and tell her about Valor. Tell her he'll need her. The attorney had waited 2 years, trying to determine the right time. When he heard about the upcoming auction and saw Valor's name on the disposal list, he knew he couldn't wait any longer. Ember received the letter 3 days before the auction. She read her father's words about love, duty, and the bond between a handler and his K-9. She read about Thorne's corruption and her father's fear. And she read the final request. Take care of Valor. He's family. He'll protect you. And together, you might find the truth I couldn't prove. Ember made her decision immediately. She would go to that auction. She would bring Valor home. And she would find out what really happened the night her father died. Nobody expected a 10-year-old girl to walk into that auction hall and change everything. The Labrador dog in cage 224 didn't move when people walked past. His head stayed low, his body pressed against the back corner like he was trying to disappear into the metal itself. One ear had a permanent droop from an old injury, and a scar cut across his shoulder in a line that told stories nobody wanted to hear. The auction hall buzzed with noise. Dogs barking, handlers shouting, bidders arguing over prices. But cage 224 remained silent except for the sound of shallow breathing. Then the girl walked in. Small, maybe 10 years old, wearing red sneakers that were 2 sizes too big and a jacket that had clearly belonged to someone else first. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail that had started neat but was coming loose. She carried something metal in one hand that caught the fluorescent lights, a badge. And in her other hand, a piece of paper folded so many times it had gone soft at the creases. People noticed her immediately. A rancher nudged his friend. "Whose kid is that?" The friend shrugged. "Shouldn't be here alone." This ain't a petting zoo. But Ember Caulfield didn't hear them. Her eyes were scanning cage numbers, counting down, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. 219, 220, 221. She walked faster. 222, 223. Her breath caught. There. Cage 224. The number matched what the attorney had told her. They've got him in the problem section. The dogs nobody wants. The ones they'll put down if nobody bids. Ember stopped in front of the cage, and for a moment she couldn't breathe. Because even though Valor looked different, thinner, grayer around the muzzle, with eyes that held exhaustion she'd never seen before, she recognized him instantly. He'd been at her 5th birthday party. He'd let her put a party hat on his head while her dad laughed and took pictures. He'd slept under her bed the night she had nightmares about monsters. His presence solid and protective. He'd been family. And now he was here, caged and forgotten, labeled dangerous by people who didn't know him at all.
Valor, Ember whispered.
The dog's head lifted slightly. Not much. Just enough for his eyes to find hers. And in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition, memory, grief shared. Valor's tail moved, barely, just the faintest twitch. But it was enough. Ember's hands shook as she reached toward the cage bars. "Hey!" A handler rushed over, alarm sharp in his voice. "Don't touch that dog. He's aggressive. He bit someone last month." Ember didn't pull her hand back. "He's not aggressive. He's scared." She pushed her fingers through the bars slowly. Valor watched her hand approach, his body tense. Then, carefully, he leaned forward and pressed his muzzle against her palm. The contact was gentle, deliberate, heartbreaking. The handler stopped mid-stride, stunned. That's impossible. He doesn't let anyone touch him." Ember's eyes filled with tears. "He remembers me. He was my dad's partner." She turned to look at the handler, her young face fierce with determination. "Officer Rhett Caulfield. He died 2 years ago. Valor was with him." The crowd around them had gone quiet, people turning to watch this strange scene. A child and a supposedly dangerous dog connecting in a way that defied everything they'd been told. The auctioneer's voice boomed across the hall. "All right, folks, let's continue. Next up, K9 Titan, 5 years explosive detection." But Ember wasn't listening. She was looking at Valor, and Valor was looking back. And in his amber eyes she saw what nobody else could see. He wasn't broken. He was mourning. A woman in an expensive coat leaned toward her companion. "That's the dog that failed every evaluation. They said he was traumatized beyond rehabilitation." Her companion nodded. "Waste of resources keeping him this long. Should have been put down after the incident."
Ember Jutslens head.
These people were talking about Valor like he was furniture, like his years of service meant nothing, like the bond he'd shared with her father was disposable. The auction continued around them. Dogs were brought out one by one, paraded before bidders, sold to the highest offer. Beautiful dogs, strong dogs, dogs with gleaming coats and perfect obedience. The crowd cheered for them, bid enthusiastically, took photos. But when the auctioneer's gaze drifted toward the back corner, toward the problem cages, his enthusiasm dimmed. And now we have K9 Valor, formerly of District 9. His voice dropped. Labrador, 8 years old. Retired due to psychological instability following a critical incident. Nobody raised a paddle. Nobody moved. The silence was deafening. Ember felt rage building in her chest, hot and sharp. Valor had given everything for this community. He'd protected people who now couldn't even look at him. And they were going to let him die because he reminded them of violence they didn't want to remember. The auctioneer tried again. Starting bid, $100? Nothing. People looked away, uncomfortable. Valor's head lowered further, like he understood he was being rejected all over again. Ember's hands balled into fists. She couldn't let this happen. She wouldn't. I'll take him. Her voice rang out across the barn, small but absolutely certain. Every head turned. The auctioneer blinked, leaning forward. I'm sorry, did someone? I said I'll take him, Ember shouted, louder this time. She stepped forward, holding up the badge she'd been carrying. He was my father's partner. He belongs with me. The barn erupted in confused murmurs. The handler who'd warned her earlier moved closer. Kid, you can't just, this isn't how it works. You need an adult. You need paperwork. I need my dad's dog, Ember interrupted, her voice breaking. And he needs me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded letter, holding it up with shaking hands. My father left me a letter. He told me to take care of Valor. He told me. A voice cut through the crowd, cold and authoritative. That's enough. Lieutenant Garrison Thorne pushed his way forward, his uniform crisp, his expression hard. Ember's stomach dropped. She recognized him from the funeral, from the investigation reports, from the nightmares. He was the officer who'd arrived too late, the one her father's letter had warned her about. Thorne stood in front of her, looking down with eyes that held no kindness. Little girl, you need to leave. This is an adult auction. Children aren't permitted. Ember held her ground even though her legs wanted to run. I have my father's letter. He wanted me to have Valor. Your father is dead, Thorne said bluntly. Several people in the crowd gasped at his cruelty. And that dog is department property. He's been evaluated by professionals who determined he's dangerous. He stays in custody. Behind Thorne, Ember could see Valor's reaction. The dog had gone rigid. His eyes locked on the lieutenant with an intensity that made the handler near the cage step back. Valor's lips pulled back slightly, not quite a snarl, but close. His whole body had changed from defeated to alert, focused entirely on Thorne. The recognition was unmistakable, and so was the aggression. See, Thorne gestured at the cage. Unstable, unpredictable. That dog is a liability. But Ember had seen something else. Valor wasn't being randomly aggressive. He was being specifically aggressive. Toward Thorne. Only toward Thorne. Her father's words from the letter echoed in her mind. Valor knows. Dogs remember. Watch who he reacts to. He's not unstable, Ember said quietly. He just doesn't like you. Thorne's face darkened. What did you say? He doesn't like you, Ember repeated louder. He's calm with everyone else. But when you showed up, he got aggressive. Why is that, Lieutenant? The crowd had gone completely silent now. People were watching this confrontation with growing interest and confusion. The handler near Valor's cage spoke up, his voice uncertain. Sir, the kid has a point. The dog's been quiet all morning until you approached. Thorne's jaw clenched. The dog is traumatized. He's reacting to my uniform, not to me specifically. Then why didn't he react to the other officers here? She was terrified, but she couldn't stop now. Her father's letter had told her to trust Valor's instincts. There are 4 other uniformed officers in this room. Valor hasn't reacted to any of them. Just you. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Thorne's authority was being questioned by a 10-year-old girl, and people were starting to listen. Captain Reyes, Rhett's old friend who delivered the death notification, pushed forward from the back of the crowd. Lieutenant Thorne, maybe we should talk about this outside. His voice was careful, diplomatic, but his eyes were sharp. The child has raised an interesting observation. There's nothing to discuss, Thorne snapped. The dog is scheduled for disposal. That decision is final. Disposal. Ember's voice cracked. You're going to kill him? He's a failed K-9 with documented aggression issues, Thorne said coldly. That's protocol. He's a hero.
Ember shouted.
Tears were streaming down her face now, but she didn't care. He saved my dad's life 3 times. He served this community for 6 years. And you're going to kill him because he doesn't like you. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. The moral weight of the situation was becoming impossible to ignore. An elderly veteran in the back called out, "Let the girl speak her piece. That dog served. He deserves consideration." Others murmured agreement. Thorn was losing control of the room. "Fine," he said through clenched teeth. "Read your father's letter. Let everyone hear what a dead man thought about a dog." The cruelty in his voice made people wince. But Ember unfolded the letter with shaking hands. If she was going to save Valor, she needed people to understand. She needed them to see what her father had seen. "Dear Ember," she began, her voice trembling. "If you're reading this, it means I'm not coming home." The barn went completely quiet. Even the dogs seemed to sense the weight of the moment. Ember continued, forcing words past the lump in her throat. "I need you to know that being your dad was the greatest honor of my life. And I need you to promise me something important." She looked up briefly, saw Valor watching her intently, then continued, "Take care of Valor. He's not just a police dog. He's family. He's saved my life more times than I can count. And he'll protect you the same way. If anything happens to me, they'll try to retire him. They'll say he's unstable or dangerous. Don't believe them." Ember's voice grew stronger. "Valor is loyal to the truth. That makes him dangerous to liars." The barn erupted in whispers. Thorn's face had gone pale. "That's enough," he said sharply. "You're done." But Captain Reyes stepped between them. "Let her finish." His hand rested on his service weapon, not threatening, just present. A reminder of authority. Thorn couldn't dismiss him as easily as he'd dismissed a child. Ember read faster now, sensing her opportunity. "There are things I've discovered in my investigation that I can't prove yet. Evidence that suggests corruption in our department. If something happens to me before I can expose it, don't let them silence Valor too." He was there. He saw. "Dogs remember." The last 3 words hung in the air like an accusation. She looked directly at Thorn. "My dad wrote this 2 days before he died. He knew something was wrong. He knew someone was corrupt. And he trusted Valor to remember." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "So I'm asking you, Lieutenant Thorn, why are you so determined to kill the only witness to my father's death?" The crowd erupted. Accusations flew. Demands for answers. Thorn's careful control shattered completely. "This is ridiculous. A dog can't be a witness. That letter proves nothing." But his desperation was showing, and people noticed. Captain Reyes pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Internal Affairs. This needs to be investigated." "There's nothing to investigate," Thorn snarled. But he was backing toward the exit now, recognizing he'd lost the room. "You're letting a child's grief create conspiracy theories about a simple tragedy. Then you won't mind answering questions about why you arrived 17 minutes late to back up that night," Captain Reyes said quietly. "Or why the dashboard camera in your vehicle mysteriously malfunctioned. Or why 3 witnesses reported seeing your car parked 2 blocks away for 15 minutes before you responded." Thorn froze. The accusations had been whispered for 2 years but never spoken aloud. Never official. Now they were public, and his face showed everything. Guilt, rage, calculation. He looked at Ember with hatred that made her step back. "You have no idea what you've started, little girl." "I'm finishing what my dad started," Ember said. Her fear was gone now, replaced by something fiercer. "And I'm taking Valor home." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the auctioneer, who'd been watching this entire drama unfold with increasing alarm, cleared his throat. "Under the circumstances, I'm halting this auction pending investigation. The dog will remain in custody until—" "No," Captain Reyes interrupted. "The dog goes with the girl. Protective custody. If there's an investigation into Officer Caulfield's death, Valor is evidence. He stays with family until this is resolved." The handler unlocked cage 224. The metal door swung open with a creak that sounded like freedom. Valor didn't rush out. He stood slowly, his movements careful, his eyes on Ember. Then he walked forward, dignified despite everything, and pressed himself against her side. Ember buried her face in his fur and sobbed. All the grief she'd held for 2 years came pouring out while Valor stood perfectly still, absorbing her pain the way he'd absorbed her father's. Thorn was escorted out by 2 officers who'd worked with Rhett. The investigation that followed would last 6 months and uncover exactly what Ember's father had suspected: evidence tampering, drug money, and a cover-up that reached higher than anyone expected. Thorn would eventually be sentenced to 15 years. But in that moment, in that barn, all Ember knew was that Valor was safe. She'd kept her promise. Captain Reyes drove them home, Valor sitting in the back seat with Ember, her arms wrapped around him. "Your father would be proud," Reyes said quietly. That took courage. Ember rested her head against Valor's shoulder. "I had help. Valor showed me who to be afraid of. I just paid attention." The dog's tail wagged once, slow and deliberate. At home, Ember's mother was waiting on the porch. She'd received the call from Reyes, knew what was coming. When she saw Valor emerge from the car, her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, I thought he was gone. They told me he'd been—" "They lied," Ember said simply, "about a lot of things." Her mother knelt and let Valor approach on his own terms. The dog sniffed her hand, recognized her scent, then pressed his head against her palm. Another piece of his former life restored. That night, Valor slept at the foot of Ember's bed, exactly where he'd slept when she was 5 years old. She woke several times, needing to confirm he was really there, that this wasn't a dream. Each time, Valor was watching her with those amber eyes, standing guard the way he'd guarded her father, protecting the last piece of Ember Caulfield he had left. The media coverage was intense. "Girl saves father's police dog, exposes corruption." The headlines wrote themselves, but Ember refused most interviews. This wasn't about fame. This was about keeping a promise and finding justice. The footage from that auction, a 10-year-old girl standing up to a corrupt officer while a broken police dog watched, went viral. People across the country were moved by the loyalty, the courage, the bond that transcended death. 3 months later, Valor was officially retired from department custody and permanently placed with Ember's family. The evaluation that had once declared him psychologically unstable was reviewed and overturned. A new assessment determined that Valor was highly stable, deeply loyal, and selectively responsive to trusted individuals. Exactly what a properly trained police dog should be. His aggression toward Thorn hadn't been instability. It had been recognition. On the anniversary of her father's death, Ember brought Valor to the cemetery. They stood together at Rhett's grave, girl and dog, both carrying loss that would never fully heal. Ember read aloud from her father's letter one more time, the words she'd memorized. "Take care of Valor. He'll take care of you. And together, you'll be stronger than anything that tries to break you." She knelt and wrapped her arms around Valor's neck. "We did it, Dad. We kept the promise. We found the truth." Valor pressed closer, his breathing steady, his presence solid. A living connection to the father she'd lost, and a guardian who'd spend the rest of his life ensuring she stayed safe. Years later, Ember would become a police officer herself, specializing in K-9 units. She'd speak at academies about the bond between handlers and dogs, about loyalty that survives death, about paying attention when a dog tries to tell you something. And Valor would be with her at every speech, gray-muzzled and slow-moving but dignified. A living reminder that heroes don't stop being heroes just because they're no longer useful to the system that created them. The day Valor finally passed, peaceful and old at 14, Ember held him close and whispered the same words she'd said at the auction. "You were never broken. You were never dangerous. You were grieving and lonely and waiting for someone to see you. I'm glad I found you." Valor's tail moved once, a final acknowledgement. Then he closed his eyes, his duty complete, his promise kept. He was buried next to Rhett with full honors, a ceremony that drew officers from across the state. On his headstone were the words Ember had chosen: K9 Valor, loyal partner, protector of truth, forever family. Because that's what he'd been. Not just a police dog, not just evidence, not just a tool to be disposed of when convenient. He'd been family, and family doesn't give up on each other, no matter how long the fight, no matter how impossible the odds. In the end, a 10-year-old girl had saved a broken police dog from auction. But the truth, the one everyone eventually understood, was simpler and more profound. They'd saved each other.